The architect's hand found my shoulder like it was the only solid thing in a room full of sinking sand. His palm was warm, slightly damp, and he pulled me close with the desperate grace of a man who had run out of options exactly 3 seconds ago. "Sorry, we have to check that," he said, his voice smooth as polished concrete, aimed at the society matron bearing down on us with her champagne flute and her hunting instinct. My girlfriend's fascinated by the artist's blue period. Absolutely obsessed. I didn't move. I let him press me into his side, let my body conform to the shape of his panic like water finding its level. The matron's eyes narrowed, but she was too well-bred to pursue prey that had already been claimed. She drifted away, trailing Chanel number 5 in disappointment. We made it 12 feet before I gently freed myself from his grip. The gallery's lighting was deliberately dim, all amber pools and deep shadows, designed to make everything look like it mattered more than it did. I stopped beneath a canvas that was mostly navy with a single slash of vermilion, aggressive, like a wound. I tilted my head, let the silence stretch, and then I said, "Architect, your blue period is currently staring at us from across the room." His eyes went wide. Just for a moment. Then something shifted in them, some recognition that this stranger wasn't going to be a simple escape hatch. He glanced down at his sleeve. I'd seen the faint graphite smudge, the kind that comes from tracing elevations on cheap paper when you're too preoccupied to notice the mess you're making. "How did you, the way you looked at the ceiling when we walked in? The way you measured the room with your eyes before you saw anything else? And the ink." I gestured to his cuff. "You're either an architect or a very dedicated forger of architectural plans." His laugh was quiet, almost rueful. "I'm Julian. And you just saved me from a very particular kind of social execution. Lumi." I didn't offer my hand. I was still processing the fact that I'd been used as a human shield by a man who smelled like cedar and uncertainty. "And you owe me an explanation. A good one." The night had started simply enough. I'd come to the D'Avant gallery because my friend Mira had a piece in the group show, something about memory and the way we hold on to things that were never really ours. She'd flown to Barcelona for an emergency with her mother and asked me to be present in her absence, a task that mostly involved standing near her work and nodding thoughtfully if anyone asked questions. I was good at that. The nodding. The quiet presence that made people feel like they were being seen. The gallery was housed in an old canal-side warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial bones. The floors were honeyed oak, worn smooth by a century of footsteps. Outside, the Amstel glittered black and silver, reflecting the streetlights like scattered coins. Inside, the crowd was the usual mix of serious collectors, bored socialites, and men who held their wine glasses like they were afraid of breaking them. I'd been there an hour when I noticed him. The architect. Julian. He was in the back corner with the gallery owner, a striking woman in her early 50s with silver-streaked hair and the kind of posture that came from years of being watched. Her name was Anouk. I'd heard her introduced as they passed. Widow. Philanthropist. Woman of considerable influence. Their conversation looked intimate, but not quite comfortable. He kept glancing over his shoulder, his body angled toward the exit even while his words were angled toward her. And then the matron appeared, Mrs. van der Meer, the kind of woman who collected secrets the way other people collected art. I watched Julian's face change. Watched the calculation happen in real time. And then his hand was on my shoulder and I was being pulled into a fiction I hadn't agreed to. "Her name is Anouk," he said now, leaning against the fire escape door in the back hallway. The metal was cool through his jacket. His voice had dropped, intimate and urgent. "She's the gallery owner. She's also the widow of one of Amsterdam's most prominent developers. He stopped, ran a hand through his dark hair. "We've been involved. Privately. It can't be public." "Not yet." "Why not?" Because her late husband's foundation is funding a project I've been designing for 3 years. A pedestrian bridge. It's supposed to anchor the new canal district. But the foundation's board is conservative, and if they find out she's been involved with the architect, a man nearly 15 years younger, a man whose wife died less than 2 years ago, they'll pull the funding. They'll say her judgment is compromised. They'll say I took advantage. The project will die. And so will the careers of 40 people who've been working on it. I absorbed this. The fire escape door was slightly ajar, letting in the smell of damp stone and river water. I could see the canal from here, the way it caught the light and held it prisoner. So you need a cover, I said. A girlfriend. Someone to make a nuke look less suspicious. Someone to make the board look the other way. Yes. He said it like it cost him something. Just for tonight. I know it's insane. I know I have no right to ask. I studied him in the half-light. He was handsome in a way that wasn't trying too hard, strong jaw, eyes the color of weathered bronze, the kind of face that looked like it had been carved from something more substantial than ordinary flesh. But it was the lines around his eyes that held me. The weariness. The way he looked like he'd been carrying something heavy for a very long time. Architect, I said slowly. What exactly are you asking me to do? He opened his mouth, then closed it. I could see him recalibrating, trying to find the right words. I need you to be my girlfriend. Tonight. Not just the arm candy version. He paused, swallowed. The kind who's been around. The kind who knows things. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. So you want me to construct an entire backstory, complete with emotional texture and believable flaws, so your secret girlfriend's social circle doesn't blow up your professional life. You don't want a mask. You want a character. He stared at me. You sound like you've done this before. Never with an architect. But I grew up in a family of actors. I know the difference between a prop and a performance. I let the silence stretch, watching him watch me. Let me ask you something. What level are we talking about? The we're going to Tuscany next month kind of girlfriend? Or the kind whose mother doesn't approve of you and she can tell in under 3 sentences? He blinked. What's the difference? The first one is easy to maintain. The second one requires actual presence. Actual credibility. It means I have to be able to look your friends in the eye and make them believe I've been in your life long enough to be disappointed by you. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe. Or attraction. It was hard to tell in this light. I need the second one, he said quietly. The real one. I pushed off from the wall. My heels clicked against the concrete floor, a steady, unhurried rhythm. I stopped in front of him, close enough to see the faint stubble along his jaw, the way his pulse was visible in his throat. My name is Lumi. And you owe me a proper drink after this. Not champagne. I extended my hand. Deal? He took it. His palm was warm, his grip firm. Deal. We walked back into the gallery together, close but not touching. The shift was immediate. I could feel eyes on us, cataloging us, slotting us into their mental frameworks. Julian's hand found the small of my back, and I let him guide me through the crowd like we'd done this 100 times. Anouk appeared in front of us, her smile fixed and sharp as a scalpel. She was beautiful in that particular Dutch way, tall, composed, with cheekbones that could cut glass. She wore a black silk dress that probably cost more than my rent, and a diamond on her finger that she touched absently as she approached. Julian, she said, her voice warm but her eyes cold. You disappeared. I was worried. I was showing Lumi the back gallery. She wanted to see the viscera pieces. And you didn't introduce me to your companion? Anouk's gaze swept over me, assessing, dismissing. Julian never mentioned he was seeing someone. The silence that followed was deliberate. She'd left it open, a trap designed to make me stumble, to reveal myself as the interloper I was. I didn't look at Julian. I looked at Anouk, and I let my expression soften into something almost pitying. He doesn't talk about what he treasures, I said gently. But then, you already know that about him. I touched my ear. The silver hoop I'd bought at a corner shop before the gallery opening, cheap, simple, the kind of thing that looked like it could have been a gift from someone who cared. These, I said, tilting my head so they caught the light. He designed them. They're the most restrained thing I've ever seen him make. He called it architecture for the body. I paused, let my voice drop to something more intimate. He said buildings are just jewelry for the city. But this was for me. Anouk's smile didn't waver, but something behind it shifted. Dimmed. She was an expert at hiding her feelings, but I'd been watching people do that my whole life. I could read the subtraction in her eyes. Beautiful, she said, the word flat. Well. Enjoy the rest of the exhibition. She drifted away, and Julian's hand found my elbow. He guided me toward the exit, his movements deliberate but unhurried. The gallery door swung closed behind us, and the night air hit my face, cold, clean, smelling of water and stone. His hand was still on my elbow. He didn't let go. The earring, he said. Where did you get it? Don't ask questions you don't want the answer to. I'm asking anyway. I turned to face him. The street was quiet, the canal water lapping softly against the stone banks. Streetlights reflected in his eyes like scattered gold. 3 blocks away. A shop that sells jewelry made from old silverware. I shrugged. It was 12 euros. He stared at me. I could see him processing what I'd done, the quick thinking, the fiction I'd constructed out of nothing, the way I'd made Anouk doubt herself without ever raising my voice. You're terrifying, he said finally. You know that? I prefer the word resourceful. His laugh was surprised, genuine. It changed his whole face. The weariness lifted, and for a moment he looked younger, lighter, like a man who'd forgotten he was allowed to find things funny. You were right about the drink, he said. I owe you one. You owe me several. And the night's not over yet. He looked at me, really looked, and I felt something shift between us. It wasn't the performance anymore. It was something more complicated, more dangerous. Lumi, he said, and just my name, said that way, sounded like a question he wasn't sure he wanted to ask. Your girlfriend's driver is still in the car across the street, I said quietly. She's watching. So you're going to put your hand on my hip, and we're going to walk toward the bridge like we're having the kind of conversation that can't be interrupted. He followed my gaze. Sure enough, a black sedan was parked at the corner, engine running, a silhouette visible behind the wheel. You see everything, he said, more statement than question. It's the only way to stay ahead of people like her. We started walking. His hand settled on my hip, careful and warm, and I leaned into him just enough to make it look natural. The city unfolded around us, canals crossing at improbable angles, bridges arching over black water, bicycles chained to iron railings like skeletal sculptures. I have a bridge, he said eventually. The one I mentioned. It's meant to open next week. I designed it after my wife died. He paused, and I felt the weight of the confession. I thought if I could build something that connected people, connected places, maybe I'd feel less alone, I finished. Yeah. He was looking at the water now, not at me. Anouk's project was supposed to be my way back. My way to matter again. But I think I've been building the wrong thing. I let that sit. The night was quiet around us, just the distant murmur of traffic and the occasional clatter of bicycle wheels on cobblestones. What did your wife think of your work? He stopped walking. Turned to face me. His eyes were complicated, full of things he wasn't sure he wanted to say. She was the one who taught me that buildings should serve people. Not just the people who pay for them. He shook his head. I forgot that, I think. I started thinking about legacy, about my name on things. And I stopped remembering why I wanted to build in the first place. Which is? His hand dropped from my hip. He stepped closer, and I didn't step back. To make people feel like they belong somewhere, he said, and his voice was rough, stripped of all polish. Like there's a place that was built just for them. Like someone thought about where they'd stand and how the light would hit their face and whether they'd feel safe. I looked up at him. The streetlight behind him haloed his dark hair, made his features sharper, more defined. What I said about the earring, I said quietly. I told Anouk half the truth. Your work does have a quality. It's not arrogant. It's careful. Like you're trying to protect people from the world, even if they don't know they need protecting. He exhaled. It was barely a sound, but I heard it. Lumi. That's my name. Don't wear it out. His hand came up, not quite touching my face, hovering like he wasn't sure he was allowed. I could see him making a choice, could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, not the professional calculation anymore, but something more personal. You shouldn't have to carry someone else's secrets, he said. I know that. I know I'm asking too much. But I don't want to let you go yet. You're not going to let me go, I said. You're going to walk me home, and you're going to stop at the door, and you're going to look at me like you're trying to memorize my face. And then tomorrow, you're going to call me. Because Anouk will be watching to see if you do. That's very specific. I'm a very specific person. We started walking again, and the city flowed around us. I gave him my address, not real, but close enough. An address in Depijp, a neighborhood that would suggest a certain kind of life, independent, unpretentious, real. This might be a terrible idea, he said as we approached the canal bridge near my imaginary apartment. Probably. But terrible ideas make the best stories. Is that what this is? A story? I stopped at the bridge's midpoint, the water spreading out below us like dark velvet. Across the canal, a houseboat glowed yellow and warm, someone's life happening behind those curtains. Everything is a story, I said. The question is what kind of story you want it to be. He stood beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. We looked out at the city together, and it was the most present I'd felt in months. I want this to be the kind of story I don't forget, he said. Even if it ends tonight. Who says it ends tonight? He turned to look at me. His hand found mine, not the performative hand, but the real one, the one that was uncertain and slightly cold in the night air. It's almost over, he said. The performance. Once Anouk's satisfied, once the foundation signs off, there's no reason for us to, is that how you see it? That I'm just a reason? No. He said it quickly, fiercely. No. That's not what I meant. I'm trying to say that I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to meet someone in the middle of a lie and figure out if there's something true underneath. That's a pretty good start, actually. I squeezed his hand. Admitting you don't know. His laugh was soft, almost sad. You make it seem easy. The way you move through the world. Like you were born knowing how to make people feel comfortable. Not comfortable. Seen. There's a difference. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he lifted our joined hands and pressed his lips to my knuckles, not a kiss, not quite a gesture of romance, more like a seal. A promise. Tomorrow, he said. You'll answer if I call? I haven't missed a call in 6 years, I said. I don't plan to start now. I walked alone from the bridge, my heels clicking against the cobblestones, feeling the weight of the night settling around my shoulders. When I turned the corner and was sure I was alone, I stopped. Took a breath. Let myself feel the thing I'd been pushing away since he first touched my shoulder. What just happened? What exactly did I just let myself walk into? My real apartment was 20 minutes away, in a quieter part of the city. I'd need to take the tram, and I'd need to change my shoes because the heel was starting to blister. But I couldn't move yet. I couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd said my name. 3 days later, the text arrived. I was at a coffee shop in Jordan, reading a book I'd already read twice, trying to convince myself that I hadn't been waiting for this exact message. Anouk is holding a dinner. She's invited us. I can say no if you want. I typed back, when and where. I knew I should want him to say no. I knew this was becoming complicated in ways I hadn't anticipated. But I also knew that the night on the bridge had created something between us, a thread that I wasn't ready to cut. The dinner was in a private room at one of the city's old canal houses. Leather chairs. Candlelight. That particular kind of quiet that said everyone in the room was wealthy enough to be careful with their words. Anouk was there, of course, flanked by 2 women who wore their pearls like armor. They had the kind of smiles that didn't reach their eyes, the kind of questions that came in shapes designed to trip you up. I've always wondered, one of them said, leaning forward with false warmth, how did the 2 of you meet? It must have been quite romantic. Julian stiffened beside me. I felt him reach for a response, felt him hesitate. Before he could speak, I set down my wine glass and said, he tried to use me as cover for an affair. The table went silent. I smiled, light and easy. He didn't know I knew. But I always know. That's the thing about Julian, he thinks he's being subtle, but his eyes give him away. Always scanning for exits, always calculating. I glanced at him, let my look soften. It's what makes him good at what he does. But it's also what made me fall for him. Anouk's face was perfectly still. The woman who'd asked the question looked like she'd swallowed something sharp. So I told him that if he wanted me, I continued, he'd have to stop running. And here we are. Well, Anouk said, her voice silk over steel. That's quite the story. All the best ones are. I took a sip of my wine, let the pause hang. Julian told me how much your foundation means to him. The Bridge Project. It's beautiful, the way you're both committed to the same vision. It must be a wonderful partnership. The word partnership landed like a dart. I saw Anouk's jaw tighten, just slightly. He hasn't told me much, I said, softening, making myself small, but he says you're the one who made the project possible. I can't imagine how much work that must have taken. The fundraising alone must have been enormous. I tilted my head, letting my voice dip into something almost confessional. Honestly, I don't know how you juggle all of it. And still find time to host dinners like this. I watched Anouk's defenses shift. She couldn't be cruel to someone who'd just praised her, not without looking petty. Not without admitting that she'd chosen to be threatened by me. Oh, it's nothing, she said. I've always believed in supporting the arts. And you're so good at it. I smiled, warm and open. Julian and I were just talking about that, actually. About how people like you make the whole community possible. Beside me, Julian's hand found my knee beneath the table. I didn't look at him, but I felt the pressure of his fingers, not possessive, but something else. Admiration, maybe. Relief. The sense that he'd never met anyone who could do what I could. Anouk's friends changed the subject after that. They had to. I'd made it impossible to continue their line of attack. The rest of the dinner passed in careful pleasantries, and when it was over, Julian walked me out into the cold night air. "Lumi," he said, his voice rough. I don't have words. Your hand on my knee was a nice touch. I meant what it said. He turned to face me. I meant that you saved me. Again. Julian, I know. I know this is supposed to be a transaction. I know there's no world where this makes sense. But I don't want to pretend anymore. The streetlight above us hummed, yellow and flickering. His face was half in shadow, half in light. I don't know what I want, he said. I mean, I do. I want to stop running. I want to build things that matter. I want to feel like I'm alive again. He took a breath. And I want to know if you feel this too. This thing between us. Or if I'm imagining it. I looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself be honest. I don't get involved in other people's performances, I said. I stand on the edge, and I watch. It's what I've always done. I reached up and touched his face, just the barest brush of my fingers against his jaw. But you feel real. Even when you're pretending, you feel real. He closed his eyes. Leaned into my touch. I'm going to ask you something, he said. And I need you to answer honestly. Okay. The bridge. It opens on Saturday. I'm supposed to be there with Anouk, making speeches, thanking donors, pretending this project was never about anything but community and vision. He opened his eyes. I don't want to pretend anymore. I want to show it to you. Just the two of us. Before the ceremony. Before anyone else. Julian, that's insane. I know. But I don't care. I studied him in the yellow light. He was afraid, I could see that. Afraid I'd say no. Afraid he'd been wrong about me. I'll be there, I said. Saturday. Midnight. I'll meet you at the bridge. His whole face shifted. The relief was almost physical, like a weight lifting. Midnight, he repeated. Lumi, don't say anything yet. I stepped back, put space between us. Wait until I'm there. Then you can say whatever you need to say. I walked away before he could stop me, my heels clicking against the cobblestones like a countdown. Saturday came cold and clear. I arrived at the bridge at 11:45, dressed in my warmest coat, my breath fogging in the crisp air. The structure rose above me, graceful and imposing, its steel cables catching the moonlight like silver thread. At midnight exactly, Julian appeared at the opposite end. He walked toward me slowly, his hands in his pockets, his face unreadable. When he reached me, he stopped. Looked at me like I was the only thing in the world that mattered. You came, he said. I said I would. I know. He shook his head. I've been standing here thinking about what I want to say. And I've realized I don't have the right words. Try. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A metal plaque about the size of his palm. He held it up so I could see the engraving. Every bridge needs a name, he said. Something that makes it more than just steel and concrete. Something that makes it matter. He handed me the plaque. I told you my wife taught me about building for people. But I forgot something she also taught me. She said a building should feel like it was waiting for you. Like it knew you were coming. I looked at the plaque, then at him. Julian, what are you saying? I'm saying the bridge is yours. He was nervous now, I could see it. The tension in his jaw, the way he kept checking my reaction. I know it's too soon. I know this is insane. But I've spent the last 3 years building things for other people, for donors, for foundations, for people who don't care about the why. And then you walked into that gallery, and you saw me. The real me. And he laughed, shaking his head. I want to build things that matter to you, Lumi. I want to build something we can both call our own. I looked at the plaque again. The simple letter. The promise it represented. You realize, I said slowly, you barely know me. I know enough. Julian, I know you lie gracefully. I know you see things other people miss. I know you let people think they're winning even when you've already won. And I know you're the most honest person I've ever met, even when you're pretending to be someone else. I opened my mouth to respond, but he shook his head. I'm not proposing. I'm not asking you to marry me or move in with me or change your life. I'm just asking you to let me show you that I'm serious. That this, whatever this is, isn't a transaction anymore. The canal water lapped against the bridge's foundations. Above us, the stars were just visible through the city's glow. I have one condition, I said. Name it. From now on, you stop pretending with me. No more performances. No more lies of omission. If we're doing this, we're doing it real. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his warmth in the cold air. I don't know how to do that, he admitted. I've been pretending so long I'm not sure who I am without it. But I want to try. For you, I want to try. I reached out and took his hand. His fingers curled around mine, warm and sure. Then let's try, I said. Starting now. He pulled me in, his free hand coming up to cup my face, tilting my chin toward his. His kiss was like the bridge, careful, deliberate, designed to hold. It tasted like the cold night air and something sweeter underneath, something that felt like the beginning of a thing he'd been building for years. When we broke apart, the first lights on the bridge flickered on. One by one, they illuminated the structure, tracing its lines against the dark sky like a drawing coming to life. I laughed, surprised. Did you time that? Maybe. He smiled down at me, and in the glow of the bridge lights, he looked like he'd finally found something he'd been looking for. I thought you deserved a proper reveal. We stood there together, watching the city wake up around us. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolled. The night was still and cold, but I didn't feel it. All I felt was his hand in mine, the solid weight of the plaque in my pocket, and the way the whole world seemed to have shifted. No one's ever built me a bridge before, I thought. No one's ever even thought to try. Lumi? Yes? I meant what I said. About this being real. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. I know I can't promise I'll be good at it. But I'm going to try. I squeezed his hand. That's all anyone can do. We walked to the center of the bridge, where the water below was black and endless, scattered with the reflections of 1,000 lights. When the next set of lights came on, I saw the full scope of his design, the elegant sweep of the cables, the careful proportions, the way every element seemed to point toward the future. The city needed a bridge, he said softly. And I needed a place to start over. Did you find it? He looked at me, and the answer was in his eyes. Yeah, he said. I think I did. I stayed until the first hints of dawn began to creep across the sky, the gray light slowly replacing the black. By the time we parted, I'd memorized every detail of his face, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, the sound he made when he was thinking, the quiet way he said my name like he was still learning how to trust it. I walked home in the early morning, past the waking city, past the milkmen and the paper deliverers and the first brave joggers. And I smiled the whole way, because for the first time in years, I'd found something real. The bridge opened that weekend to much fanfare. Julian gave his speech, Anouk smiled for the cameras, and the city officials nodded approvingly. But when the crowd had cleared and the lights had dimmed, there was only one person standing at its center. The plaque was small, easily missed. But I knew it was there. I'd watched him install it myself. This is who you are, I said on the night I showed it to him again, months later, when we'd stopped pretending to be anything other than ourselves. This is what you build. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, warm and solid against the wind. No, he said, pressing a kiss to my hair. This is what we built. And standing there, on a bridge that had started as a lie and ended as a promise, I realized he was right. The story we'd written wasn't the one either of us had planned. But it was the one that had been waiting for us all along. A story about bridges and buildings, about performances and truth, about two people who'd learned that the best things in life can't be designed, they can only be built, piece by piece, with someone who sees you clearly enough to believe in what you're trying to become.
Subscribe to me for more content.